Hey Hotshots, Jess with Emotional Fire Academy, today to talk about how to ignore the emotions of others. This is by request. In one of the comments, I am going to cover this, so thank you for those who have subscribed to my channel, and if you are a highly sensitive person who is looking to up-level your experience, please subscribe to my channel by clicking the button below. I put out new videos every week about tools, tips, and tricks to do just that, to make your experience as an HSP even better and to really up-level your life. So, who am I? I'm Jess. I'm your driver operator on this journey. I am a former firefighter and a master NLP practitioner. So, I have an announcement to make before I jump in and explain more about how to become fireproof to others' emotions. I am running a November special on my Flammable to Fireproof program. This is a 12-week one-on-one coaching experience with me where I essentially teach you all this stuff and guide you through everything that I'm explaining in my videos. So if you need some additional support, if you're looking for personalized guidance, I can definitely provide that. It's 30% off for the month of November only. So if you're watching this in 2050, I'm sorry, the special has ended. But yeah, so check that out on my website, emotionalfireacademy.com. All right, enough of the personal plugs. Let's jump right in. So this was actually posed to me in the comments, and it's actually a specific incident of essentially how not to take things personally. So if you haven't checked out those videos, how not to take things personally, that was a very popular video. I pretty much explained all of this in different terms. So check that out. I'll put the link above. But when we're trying to learn something, it's really helpful, I've found, to hear it over and over again. And sometimes rephrased a little bit differently, and sometimes phrased exactly the same. So when you hear things and then suddenly it clicks, that's when we have this aha moment and the knowledge actually kind of sinks in and becomes more than just an intellectual concept. It actually becomes like a body awareness. So I'm happy to re-explain this again. It's essentially the same thing, but we're going to use totally different analogies. So today I came up with this computer analogy, which I think a lot of people will understand and connect to and conceptualize in a different way. So, sorry, I always have to gather myself before I launch into this. So your crash course and how to be able to ignore the emotions of others, how to be fireproof to their emotions, how to be totally intact as either an empath or a highly sensitive person and not absorb other people's stuff. How do we do that? What does this look like? So the first thing you need to know is, and I'm going to kind of bear with me on all this because I'm going to go a little bit tangential here. We're going to kind of explore awareness. Awareness sometimes includes a lot of back information. And that's okay. And that's where we're going to be right now. So the first thing is you have to subscribe to the idea that you can control, that you have some degree of control over this. So again, you have to believe, or at least entertain the idea, the thought, that you can take control of this. Because if you're having problems with taking on other people's stuff, perceiving that that's happening, you are probably running a program that says, I can't overcome other people's emotions. Like other people's emotions, it's probably the thought in there, the thought in your body, in your programming, is that I can't control this. I am a victim of this. When I see other people and they have a strong reaction, I have that strong reaction. That is the thought. That's the belief that's being held. If you didn't have this belief, you would not be fazed by other people. So, being aware, and in computer terms, it's kind of like having a computer. And this is kind of the overarching structure of what NLP actually is. It's about essentially hacking your computer. You are the computer. You're a computer. You come into the world as a fresh slate. Your childhood is essentially a time when all of your programming is uploaded through either imitation or, people directly teach you things. So that's the programming part. You're downloaded with a bunch of stuff. And then you're set loose on the world to then operate as an independent computer. And you've got all this stuff. You've got all these programs running. Just like when you get a new computer, you can get it out of the box, and it's got all this stuff like pre-installed on it. A lot of it is garbage. A lot of it is just stuff from the manufacturer. It's just automatic things that, were put in, and it can be really frustrating as a computer owner and as a human to have to deal with all these programs that are constantly running, and to never to be taught how to uninstall or override these programs. And this is essentially what NLP is. It's getting into the software and literally changing the program. And that's why I love NLP. And it's so effective for highly sensitive people, because the things that we've picked up along the way, the programs that we've picked up, can be very maladaptive. And being an empath is a program that really, does it serve anyone? I used to think I was really proud of being an empath at one point. I was like, wow, yeah, I pick up on disembodied emotions of others. And then I realized how much pain and agony that caused me. That just really wasn't a good program. It didn't really help me in the long run. And it's just okay, that's a cool parlor trick, but what at the end of the day, how does that really help me? And so realizing that the awareness that I'm trying to bring to you right now is you do have control. You are similar to a computer in that programs can be changed, right? Anything you've learned, you can unlearn. You came in with nothing. Everything that you picked up is a program. It is a program. Every emotion that you have is a program. And it can be unprogrammed. Have you ever had an original emotion where you're I'm having an emotion I can't even explain or understand yet? You have to put words to it, right? We don't ever really have original emotions. So we have the emotions that we've been taught, the standard ones: anger, sadness, fear, happiness, joy, disappointment. We have words for all of these, so these are the ones we use. Anyway, I'm going tangential here. So there's your awareness. You are like a computer. So let's go deeper into this. So how do we learn to ignore the emotions of others? So being affected by the emotions of others is a program. Being affected by the emotions of others is a program. It's a program we're running up here that then becomes reality in our body and then our external circumstances. So how do we identify the program? And I have a quote here. Let me read this first, and then we'll jump into how to identify the program. And this goes to prove that we are a bunch of programs. We're hardware. Our bodies are the hardware. The software is our mind. And then, what we do with that is then is really under our control. And here is a little bit of evidence of proof of starting to believe, okay, I am under control of this. This is from the book The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van de Kolk, which I haven't actually read. I started, but I kind of lost interest in it, but this quote I think really sums it up well. So the neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux and his colleagues have shown that the only way we can consciously access the emotional brain is through self-awareness, i.e. by activating the medial prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that notices what is going on inside of us and thus allows us to feel what we are feeling. So the technical term for this is interoception, Latin for looking inside. So most of our conscious brain is dedicated to focusing on the outside world, getting along with others, and making plans for the future. However, this does not help us manage ourselves. Neuroscience research shows that the only way we can change the way we feel is by becoming aware of our own inner experience and learning to befriend what is going on inside of ourselves. So this essentially says that the medial prefrontal cortex is the observer. In spiritual circles, they'll talk about the observer. The observer is always, who is observing your thoughts, right? Your medial prefrontal cortex is. There's an actual location in your brain. So when you slip into these patterns of, I'm so pissed at this person, there's a part of that's the emotional part of your brain, probably your amygdala, probably some old pathways, but you have a whole brain. Your whole brain is not active in this process. There's the medial prefrontal cortex, who's sitting there quietly in the front, just kind of observing. And it's there. Everybody has a medial prefrontal cortex. Everybody does. This is a part of your brain that exists, that is observing. This is the observer. And so this is part of the solution to how to not let the emotions of others affect us, is starting to interact more with this part. And it's up front. When you tap on your head, it's like, oh, it's right behind the skull there. It's the prefrontal cortex, the front of your brain. And it's always there participating in every reaction that you actually have. It's kind of that little voice of, oh, we could take the high road. And sometimes it's quiet, it just watches. It's the observer. It's the observer part of us. There's an actual location in your brain that is the observer. So when we're starting to want to change this program, we know we have a program running that is making us, maybe it's the fact that we identify as an empath. Maybe it's just this story that we have that when I see this person, I get enraged. Maybe it's just, it's something along those lines. So we have this awareness. I've given you this overarching, okay, we're like a computer. There's a part of our brain that's always just observing, that's detached from the emotional part. Okay, great. So let's identify the program. Let's identify your program. And how do we do this? This is kind of like hitting the Control F button on your computer. You're looking for the program, Control F, trying to find something. How do we do this in our body, in our physical human existence? We ask, why? Why? Why am I, and this can zoom in or out as much as we want. Either why am I so affected by other people's emotions? Or why am I so affected by this person's anger? And then we kind of have to sit with it, right? Just like when we hit Control F, sometimes it takes the computer a little while to search through all of the instances and pop up with the one we're actually looking for. And there might be several thoughts in there that explain, you might have a lot of programs running, like I am an empath. Oh, well, that allows that to happen. I have mirror neurons and that's just what happens to me. Okay, that's another program that has the same output, that you get upset. So you might have a lot of programming in there that supports this being able to happen. So when we start to identify some of the programming, we can then do something about it. So are you ready to do something about it? I am. I did. I got this. I went through this whole thing. So I don't just blow smoke up your bums, your beautiful little bums. This is from personal experience and from what I learned in NLP school. So the third thing we're going to do, once we've identified the program, we've figured out the story. It's usually a story we're telling ourselves. I'm an empath, or this is just how I am, or I can't control myself around other people. I just take on their emotions. Whatever the story is, or stories, there could be more than one. How do we change it? So we either override We go story by story. We either override the story or we uninstall. And how do we do that? And I actually talked about this in my last video. I'm going to put the link above. Highly Sensitive Person Treatment Part 2, which wasn't the best title, I realize. But this actually explains exactly how to override or uninstall the program. So check that out. I'll put the link above. And essentially what we want to do, overriding is telling a different story that then is more powerful and more potent and will kind of override the old program. So telling a different story. And how do we actually do this? So when you get your why, when you figure out, okay, why does this affect me? And you listen to, because I'm an empath, you start telling the exact opposite. Or, I mean, the beauty of it is use your imagination. Part of the mechanism of the medial prefrontal cortex is imagination and playing out scenarios and developing schemas and then putting it back into the memory bank. So the imaginative element can be, okay, maybe I'm an empath who can turn off my mirror neurons. Or I'm not an empath at all. That kind of gets into uninstalling the program. So usually whatever your why is, go to the opposite. Go to the opposite. What is the opposite of that story or statement or phrase? And start overriding it with, make that story, that opposite, bigger, more powerful, more potent. We do that by looking for evidence of think of some instances where the opposite was the case and start building on that and running in that direction instead. That's how we start overriding that program. And by repetition, then that becomes our dominant program. How do we, if you don't want to override it, how do we that takes a lot of repetition. But sometimes it can feel really good. When you're being repetitive in an area where you've been suffering a lot, repeating the good end of the story, if you've been beating yourself up a lot and being with a lot of self-doubt, sometimes telling the opposite story, I am amazing, feels really good. And so that repetition, this involves repetition, but it can be really positive repetition. How do we uninstall? So uninstalling the program is simply disassociating from the story, disassociating from it, so that that program isn't running anymore. It essentially, it's like going into your computer, finding that area. Remember the first time you realized that there was an actual uninstall area where you could click uninstall and then it ripped it out of your computer and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. And the sense of control that you felt when you found that function. Yes, this is the same thing with your experience of being you. We can uninstall. I'm teaching you how to uninstall a program. How do we do that? How do we stop identifying with that? So in the moment, what does this look like in the moment is when you're in the reaction, when you're having the reaction, remembering that there's a part of your brain that's not reacting. And literally, you can tap on it. If you can remember to do this, this is the key, the effort then that needs to be put in is remembering to do it. When you're pissed off or you're taking on somebody else's crap, and you can remember to just tap on the front of your head even once. And it can be totally just subtle, and remember that this area of your brain, your medial prefrontal cortex, is there observing. And just start to allow it to observe. And recognize, this is the mind-blowing part, recognize there's a part of you that isn't reacting and isn't believing the story and is just kind of sitting there watching. And the more that you do this is actually kind of a pattern interrupt to whatever program you were running. Getting this other part of your brain involved. It's there watching. And you might start with just, okay, it's there watching. It's just there watching. It's there watching this experience. This starts to create this gap. And this is how I experience it in my own consciousness. There's a gap in your consciousness where it's like, I am not the emotion. I am something more than that, because there's a second part of my brain that's involved in this process that's just kind of observing and sitting back and watching and not drawn into the drama and not embodying the drama and becoming the drama and identifying with the drama. There's this part that's just like, just hanging out there, watching, observing. And the more you can start, when you start doing this, I've actually done this. This is totally possible to do. Every time you have a negative emotion come up, you can literally use this method. And this is how, just like in the quote, this is how you start to become self-aware. This is how you start to uninstall that program, because the program then is not running you. You are observing the program. And once you master even just a few instances of this, once you start habitually doing this, then the gap is going to widen and you're going to be like, whoa, I don't have to run that program if I don't want to. I can have the reaction, but I'm not going to judge myself and tell the story and make this program, put meaning to it and make it this big thing. I don't have to do any of that. I can just sit there and watch it and allow this part of me to exist. And just, yeah. So there you go. That's how you start to uninstall the program. And then one day you're going to recognize, like, oh, I haven't had to do that because that program is gone. It just kind of evaporates. Because essentially you've pattern interrupted. You've interrupted the program enough times where it doesn't run anymore. It kind of uninstalls itself. It dissolves. You've pruned away the neurons that are actually involved and replaced them then with this self-awareness. So, and I've done both. I have done both to essentially transcend and overcome a lot of the bad habits of being a highly sensitive person and an empath. So, let me know what you thought in the comments. I would love to help you if you are a highly sensitive person. Remember, I have that 30% off sale going on in my one-on-one coaching just till the end of November. And yeah, thanks for watching. Have a wonderful day. I hope this helped.